the Box, Episodes of Horror with Donna and Eric. I'm Donna.
And I'm Eric.
And with us today, we have one of the authors that will be at the Texas AuthorCon and Book Festival. We have sci-fi fantasy author Mary Flint. Welcome to the show.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. It's a pleasure to get to know you. And for when we see you out there, we'll be able to put a face to the name
Yes.
and actually have a chance to get to know each other. So yeah, it's great to have you on here. Tell us what you're looking forward to the most about Texas AuthorCon.
I think definitely like meeting other authors. We've been planning panels sound really exciting, so I'm excited to do those. But mostly, I think I'm excited to see, what readers come. I haven't done much in Dallas yet, so I'm excited to kind of see how it's like there and just meet all the people that come.
Nice.
Are you from the Dallas area or?
I'm down by the coast, kind of by Corpus Christi.
Okay. So you do a lot of Houston stuff.
Yes, Houston, San Antonio is kind of my.
Yeah. I was gonna say Houston seems to be doing something all the time. I wish we were as active up here as Houston is.
Yeah.
See, I don't know my Texas geography because I thought Dallas was above Houston.
Yeah, San Antonio and
or is it below Houston?
Are kind of like a triangle.
Oh.
Yeah.
And then the rest of the stuff is kind of like a little higher on the triangle from me. So
okay. To me, it's all the same. Texas is it's giant, but it's all the same. I always think Houston and Dallas are next to each other.
Oh yeah.
They're not.
No, it's quite a haul.
I grew up with mountains, so there's no landmarks for me to be like, oh, we're in a different part of Texas now. It's just Texas.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. All right. So Eric, you got some
Okay. Yeah, I've got questions that are more fantasy relevant since we don't do horror as much. So the first question I have is Katniss, Harry Potter, or Percy Jackson? Which one's your go-to?
Katniss.
Katniss?
Yes.
Are your fantasy books kind of more in that kind of style?
Yes. My the trilogy I have right now, it's kind of a sci-fi with a fantasy twist. And Hunger Games is one of my favorite series of all time. Mm-hmm. Suzanne Collins is a genius.
Yeah, no, I think that first book is brilliant.
Yes.
I feel like it's watered down in our memory because of the movies, when you get to them splitting up the third book and stuff. But yeah, I remember, and I'm not a big fan of that first person that she wrote, the style she wrote it in, but it's that book is amazing. Yeah, it's you can go back to it over and over again and it's still find fresh and interesting things when you're reading it.
Yes, exactly. That's like the main reason why I love it so much, is it's something I can read over and over again and I pick up new little details every single time.
What about you, Donna? You've never done the fantasy stuff, so which one have you read any of the three?
I have it was Harry Potter, Katniss, and what was the third one?
Percy Jackson.
Percy Jackson. I've not read any of them. But of course I've seen the movies. Not all of the Percy Jackson movies. I've only seen the first Hunger Games movies. And I have seen all of the Harry Potter movies, just because they do a ton of marathons of Harry Potter. So it's easy to just throw them on.
My wife has them on constant, just repeat. I've seen Harry Potter, all of them, like 1,000 times. So
that's my house with Star Wars. I have Star Wars going all the time.
That's my house too. Yeah. Every weekend we watch The Mandalorian season 1 and 2 back to back all weekend.
Very nice. Yes.
Sweet.
So yeah, I don't know. I'm gonna have to go with Harry.
Sure. Especially if you haven't read it, because there's such a different thing. It's a different experience with the movies.
Yeah.
And I think they're so much, I hate to say they're better, but they are, because you get such a wide range. You start off with the early movies and they're kind of more childlike and they're innocent in a way. But then as he gets older and the story gets darker, they start bringing darker directors in. And you kind of feel that in the way that they take the movies. So, and it's kind of interesting to grow up with those kids. You can, see them from those age, going all the way and watching these kids get older and stuff. So I totally get that. Percy Jackson movies, I think they fell short. Way short of the books, and that's probably why they're doing a mini series or a TV series on Disney now.
Yeah,
trying to make that a little bit better. I like the Hunger Game movies, but they pale to the books. I mean, so and I do feel like they do get worse. The when the story goes larger in scope and it starts getting kind of political and more about all the districts and all that stuff, I do feel that if she didn't have Katniss holding it together, I think you might lose interest by the third book, but that first book is just amazing. So
Catching Fire is actually my favorite
is
book
it?
trilogy. So I guess I like the political kind of side of
Mhm.
it. I like things that are very intricate, far-reaching, but you kind of can't tell how far-reaching the actions are until, something
Right.
happens, you see the consequence.
And I think you're right. I mean, in the book, it definitely holds together much better because it is all through her perspective, and you
Yeah.
see it and you're with her. But in the movies, I think that's what I was leaning toward. As the movies progress, it gets a little tougher because we're not watching it through her eyes. We're forced to watch it kind of over her shoulder. And then it's a little different, I think. But yeah, you're right. The books are solid. You can't go wrong with the books. The movies are the ones that slowly pull it away from you. And those are the most recent things in my head, I guess. So
I think
I
just
need to
splitting the
revisit those.
last one in two pieces was a little too much.
Yeah, I got tired of the
Um,
cash grab with all these movies. The Hobbit didn't need to be 27 movies, and we didn't need three, two of the last book for that. And Twilight didn't need to be split up. But everybody saw dollar signs. So
Alas, here we are.
all right, well, let's switch to the next question. What's your favorite fantasy creature? And I guess if you want to make it sci-fi, we can go sci-fi either way. Which one's your favorite?
I mean, if we're talking in like the realms of books, I guess fantasy creatures, I do like dragons. Um, and I really like kind of the creatures that Brandon Sanderson has in his stuff.
Okay.
Like sci-fi on the sci-fi side, he has the doom slugs.
Those
I've
sound
heard,
cool.
yes. Um, I went to Dragonsteel last year and they had inflatable doom slugs crawling around.
Mhm.
It was great.
Oh, that's cool.
If we're talking more like movie, TV, I really, really like the Weeping Angels from Doctor Who.
Oh,
Yes.
I was gonna say oh yeah, here it is. Okay. Sorry, not to bog us down, but isn't that right?
Yes.
Isn't that it right there? So pretty cool. Yep. I
Keep
agree.
your
That's a
eye on
little,
it.
yeah, I know, right? So
Like one of the first times I watched a TV episode and was like genuinely terrified was the first Weeping Angel episode in Doctor Who. And I was fine while I was watching it, and I had to turn my lights off. It's like, I'm not fine anymore. This
and that
isn't
was
fun.
the second Doctor, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
David Tennant.
Yeah. These are I think those are some of the better ones too in the reboot.
Yes.
I'm old, so my favorite Doctor Who is Baker.
I
So
have to
I
find the old ones so I can like learn
yeah, I
all
know,
of
right?
the previous doctors.
If you go to Pluto TV, you can watch, they have a Doctor Who channel, but you really can't control what they show you. So you kind of jump around a little bit. But I want to say one of the BBCs that you can, go on and stream that you add on to your Prime, they have all the Doctor Who's too. So
Oh,
are
that's not.
you, what about you, Donna? Are you a Doctor Who person?
I've never watched a single episode of
I feel
Doctor
like we're excluding Donna because she's really the one that talks the most all through the interviews, and I just sit here. So
Who. No, no. You want to talk like Legend or Willow? Those are my kind of movies. Those are the movies that I
those are fun
remember.
fantasy. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, so yeah, no,
So
I've
what
never was into Doctor Who.
was there a specific movie or book that got you on the path of fantasy or slash science fiction?
I grew up pretty much exclusively on Star Wars and Star Trek. I don't
Okay.
think I had much choice in becoming a sci-fi and fantasy person. And then my older siblings were into Lord of the Rings. Um, and so I just kind of grew up in their nerdiness with them. Um, and I think though Star Wars would have to be kind of the one that had the more influence on me going into the genres I did. My books are science fantasy, basically, just like
Mhm.
Star Wars. Um, and say it's one of those kind of intricate plots that it starts kind of broad and then it gets more detailed. Um, so I think Star Wars is like the biggest influence for me.
Now I'm gonna guess. Were you? introduced by the second trilogy, or were you old school immediately and then slowly fed the other ones?
I don't remember like which ones I watched first because we just watched them all the time. So like we watched 1, we watched 4, we watched 6. I just, episode 3 came out when I was like 5, and I was very sad that I didn't get to go to the theater and watch it.
Okay.
But
So that does tell me something right there. Because again, I'm old. And so most people my age will be very like line in the sand 4, 5, and 6, and that is it. And we don't pay attention to the first 3. And I think the first 3 have got some interesting things. They also have some things I think that takes away from the whole broad scope. But are you a
Yeah.
big fan of the shows and the cartoons that came out on Cartoon Network? The Clone Wars and all that
yeah,
stuff?
so that was like I feel like my like original trilogy kind of was
Mhm.
because that was like the first Star Wars movie I saw in a theater was Clone Wars. Watched the show all the way through when it was airing. That was like the only TV show I watched. Um, and Ahsoka's my favorite character. Um, and like when they announced they were finishing Clone Wars, I was going nuts. I was so excited. That's like my Star Wars that I grew up.
Mhm. All right,
Yeah.
that's cool.
So I got to ask you, what are your thoughts on Solo?
I thought it was very fun. Like, um, I was kind of in the camp of hoping they would like maybe do another one so we could expand on it. Um, it's not one that like I reach for to rewatch a lot. Um, but like seeing it in the theater was very fun. So kind of mixed, I guess.
Yeah, same here. I'm a 100% through and through. I am Star Wars. Um, and Solo kind of just like made me very conflicted because I'm like, it's good, but it's not, I'm like,
Mhm.
I'll
So
watch
it's a
it.
good movie, but it's not a Han Solo movie, is what you're thinking.
Right, yeah. So I was just curious if
I didn't see it in the theater. I waited maybe 2 years, saw it on HBO or something, streamed it maybe when it was free, if it was ever free on something. But I was sick as a dog, so I barely remember what was going on. I do remember thinking it's not a bad movie, but I also I'm not like a typical Star Wars fan. I enjoy the franchise, but I don't live and die by it. When I was growing up, I always said my favorite trilogy was Indiana Jones. So I
oh,
would let
well,
Star
yeah,
Wars
that's,
people do their thing. I lived in Indiana. So, but
I guess I'd say
yeah.
like yeah,
What were you
I guess
saying?
I'd say it's a good movie. I'm just not sure if it's like the best Star Wars movie.
Yeah, and I
yeah.
think they might have had that problem, that issue since, when Disney kind of started pumping out some of these movies. What's your favorite movie since Disney took over?
Ooh, I think my favorite of the prequels, I think my favorite since Disney took over has definitely Rogue One.
Oh, yeah.
Like that was kind of the
Yeah.
Yeah,
best one.
I
At
think
least
so too.
Yep.
Yeah. And I mean, they're not terrible, the 7, 8, 9, but I also don't know if they have any idea of what they're trying to do or any, path. It felt like
yeah.
they were resetting characters in the middle of the movie while we're
Kind of
watching
felt
it.
like the sequel trilogy for me at least kind of felt like a kid caught between two divorcing parents.
Yeah, for
Um,
sure.
and each one wants to get rid of whatever the other parent did.
Hmm.
Well, yeah. Um, there was things I loved about each one. Um, but I think they're not my favorite. I don't reach for them very often, but
Yeah.
there are things I liked about them.
I think that's the cool thing about Disney, though, is that even though we can sit here and say, well, the movies kind of all suck, but I think almost everybody likes the shows. I mean, I'm not a huge, but I mean, you said you're watching it all the time, Donna.
Hmm.
But I think even if you don't like certain episodes overall, every Star Wars show has been decent.
Yeah.
Something you could revisit. And like you said, they're going to keep, bringing some of these other shows back that you did enjoy when you were younger. So
Yeah, we'll have
Yes.
to get together and talk Star Wars.
I know we can maybe turn it into a big Star Wars thing. I'll have to watch more of them. So what was so I guess Star Wars, that's the answer. Star Wars is your favorite movie as a kid, science fiction. Let's say we're not saying science fiction, let's say we're going fantasy. Do you have a favorite fantasy movie?
Ooh, probably a toss up between all the Lord of the Rings extended, of course.
Yeah. Of course.
Or like my favorite kind of fantasy, like I need a fun fantasy movie, Stardust.
Yeah, that's a good one. You don't hear that very often, but yeah, that totally fits into that. Have you seen Stardust,
I
Donna?
have not.
That's
No.
one, yeah, I think you'd really like. In fact, you probably love the book too, Neil Gaiman.
Oh yeah, Neil Gaiman.
Yeah, and it's got God, it's got a good cast in it. I'm trying to think: Robert De Niro, Michelle Pfeiffer.
Oh.
I know
Uh,
Charlie
isn't
Cox
I was gonna say
is,
Daredevil's in it.
yeah,
Daredevil's in it. Yeah,
and Ben
years
Barnes
before. Yeah,
plays his young dad.
it's like a fairy tale romance, but it's got a little bit more of an adult spin on it, and it's hard to explain, but I remember seeing it. It's been years since I've watched it, but yeah, no, it's a good movie. Um, that's a great choice. Yeah, you don't hear that one very often. It's usually, like you said, Lord of the Rings, or if we do science fiction, it's always Star Wars or Star Trek. Or
Yeah.
that's really cool. Okay, and you know what? So usually, what we do when we ask horror authors and people that read horror what their recommendation would be if they wanted to get into it. So if somebody was looking to get into science fiction, and let's do fantasy as well. So if somebody wants to get into science fiction, somebody wants to get into fantasy, what's the book you would say, hey, you should read this book to get you started on your path?
So one of like the first kind of sci-fi-ish books I read was Artemis Fowl. Because I'd done a lot of fantasy, but I hadn't done a lot of science fiction, and it kind of mixed the two together. He takes Irish folklore, and there's magic, but the fairies and the leprechauns, like leprechauns aren't, they're like the police. But so it has all like the folklore creatures, but they're actually like very scientifically advanced and they live underground. Then we have Artemis Fowl, who's kid genius, criminal mastermind. And so I really enjoyed that for science fiction. I also really enjoyed Ender's Game. It's not for the faint of heart. It's a little hefty, but I think the ending pays off really well. It's one of those books where like, I don't know if I'd ever like, I wish I could read it again for the first time to get that first.
Yeah, I totally get that.
Yeah.
Artemis Fowl, Donna, is a YA.
Okay.
And it's Disney put out a movie that is terrible. That came out in the last couple of years, and they basically used the name and I think a little bit of the idea, but they didn't do a very good job. I want to say another movie came out when Hunter was younger, because the only reason I know what it is because Hunter was at the age when those books were coming out, so we bought them so we could read them. But yeah, that's a great mix because they take that science, they take the fantasy characters and they put a science fiction-y twist on them. So magic isn't technically always magic. Sometimes it is science, and it's just they know how to manipulate it. So it makes it very interesting, and it's got that fast-paced YA writing style, so you're never bored. And I want to say did we get into double digits on the books? Did they get that big? It feels like it was a huge series. It kept
There
putting
were
books out.
10.
Yeah. So it's
10
one
or
of those kind of
17.
series.
Yeah.
Ender's Game, yeah, the Ender's is super heavy. And I think they did a pretty good job with the movie. If you can see the movie with Harrison Ford,
I haven't seen the movie yet. I have to see the movie.
it's a good movie. I really enjoyed it, but I think it captures the spirit of the book. But yeah, you're right. I mean, reading that book is a treat. So those are both really good ones. And do you have one that's just straight up fantasy that you might?
I'd say like for like hard fantasy, getting into it either the Mistborn trilogy by Brandon Sanderson or Aragon, The Inheritance Cycle.
Oh yeah, both of those are really good.
And then if you wanted something that's like fantasy-esque, but not like super magic, super in your face, Ranger's Apprentice and all its accompanying series by John Flanagan.
All right, there you go. There's a whole bunch of stuff, I'm sure. Because when we've done this before in the past, when we just do the fantasy stuff, those are all things that nobody's mentioned before. So that's great.
Ranger's
So
Apprentice.
I was going to say, can you tell us a little bit about what you write exactly, books and all that stuff and the storylines and things?
Yeah, so I'm working on my first trilogy right now. I have the first 2 books out.
These beautiful covers here.
Oh,
Yes,
wow.
thank
Yeah,
you.
those are nice.
So it takes place on a planet called Rendaria, but the surface of the planet has died. So all the Rendarians live in an underground city that's divided into 10 different levels. And whichever level you're born on determines what kind of job you get to have, your status, and what opportunities you're given. Our story follows, we have two main characters. We have 17-year-old Edrix. He's born on level 5, so he was an artist. He's a painter. But his father was an important military officer, and after he dies, Edrix and his older brother join the military themselves to try and salvage their family status, and so they don't have to lose anything else. And then on the flip side, we have 15-year-old Andresha. We don't know where she's from, what level she's from, what she used to do, but she's in resistance, actively trying to fight against the government. So they get thrown together through the events of the story, and they have to decide if they love their people enough to overcome their differences to save them. And then they find out that that's the least of their problems. So,
oh boy.
So it feels like it's got a little bit of Hunger Games, not the games itself, but the political aspect, you know, broken up into different levels and stuff, but also maybe a little divergent.
I like to describe it as like Star Wars meets the Hunger Games.
Okay. Oh yeah, that sounds fun.
So while Hunger Games, like kind of the political side of it is like front and center, like that's the point of the books. I feel like mine are a little bit more in Star Wars, as in, you know, it has that fight, it has that political, that revolution, you know, brewing. But the main focus is more on the characters and, you know, the hope that they find even in this dark world that they live in.
Very cool. So is it a 2-book series, or is this something that you're going to be taking farther?
So Red Star is going to be a trilogy. The last book is going to come out this year. Haven't nailed down a release date yet, but it is coming. And then it is going to branch out a little bit. So we're going to have like a prequel trilogy, I think, kind of about how the planet got to the point that it was, you know, ready for that revolution that's happening in this trilogy. Maybe a sequel. But I also want to write a fantasy book that takes place on the planet before it died and everyone moved underground. So we kind of see what Randaria was like before.
Yeah, that sounds really interesting.
Thank you.
It really does.
Yeah, I love the covers too.
Yeah, there's something about a white cover with black and red that just, it's very eye-catching. It's very, if I saw this, if I was walking past some bookshelves at like the grocery store or Barnes and Noble, it would totally draw my eye, and I would have to be like, because I'm a cover.
I am
judge.
very much a cover person.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would just grab that and be like, oh, that sounds interesting. That looks interesting. I'm gonna buy it.
It's funny because I wasn't like, I didn't think about birds at all. I actually had the second cover done first. The first book I redid the cover to match. But it's like a contest, and one of the options was that second book cover with the blackbird and I mean, both of them have blackbirds, but I was like, I never thought about birds. Like, and amongst all, I had a bunch of like, you know, the really sci-fi covers, more kind of fantasy covers. I was like, I think that's the one. And I sent it out to people. I tested them, and they were like, yeah, this one's really good. It's like, all right, great, my favorite one. Let's go.
Yeah, very cool. That's great when it all works out like that.
Yes.
Can I ask a dumb question? What was the gold foil thing?
What was what?
The gold foil stamp on your covers?
Oh, so that is the author to watch seal from Author Ready. It's an author training program. And it's basically just kind of a seal of quality. Say that this, you know, this book is it's clean, not clean as in, but like it's been
I know what you mean.
Edited well, and yeah.
Yeah, we're not just buying something that's floated up out of the ocean. Yeah, I got it. Yeah, totally. And that's cool. I just never seen anything like that on there before. So that's a smart way to do it too, so that people know that you've put in the time and the effort. Because sometimes, you know,
had to
independent
take
writers,
the classes and use the resources they had. And that's how you get it. So it's kind of like
cool.
school for authors, I guess.
Yeah, a little boot camp and then get you going. Yeah, because I can't tell. I mean, a lot of times with authors, you know, Donna and I talked about before, you don't know what you're doing and you just kind of learn by error. And so eventually you get it all done and then you can go backtrack and stuff. But it's kind of cool that you did it the other way. So
Yep.
especially like because it's so hard to find like when you're by yourself, like there's like hundreds of editors. How do I find the one that works best for me? There's thousands of formatters, there's thousands of copy editors, there's millions of artists. And just having those resources was so great, and finding, okay, these are people that people have worked with before. They're going to do a good job. I don't have to worry about, okay, did I pick the right person? Just because I love publishing, but it can be a little tricky, seeing what's legit and what's not.
Yeah, that's the problem. There's a lot of snake oil salesmen.
Yeah.
In the indie realm, on I think all genres, people looking to make a buck, and they don't really care as much about your work as you do. So
yeah. So if anybody watching is interested, I just searched Author Ready. That's what you said, right?
Yeah.
Yep. So it's just a website, authorready.com, and if you go there, you can see the courses and get information about that. Yeah, it's pretty interesting.
Yeah, very cool.
Yeah. They can get your ISBNs, your Library of Congress numbers, your barcodes. And they have a couple editors that they work with, and they do a phenomenal job. And everybody's so nice.
That's always important. Yeah.
That's like
find somebody that you connect with. Yeah, that's very good. That's cool. Yeah, we'll put the link down.
Awesome. I really enjoy working with them. They're actually who I got my covers through too. So
cool. Yeah. Well, that's helpful too. You got one spot and you don't have to go to 1,000 different sites and deal with a whole bunch of different people, and everybody's got different, contacts and regulations and the way they do things. So it's nice to have everything in a one-stop place.
Yeah, for
sure. And they started it because they were tired of seeing people get taken advantage of.
That's nice too.
So they wanted to make a place where you could find good things, good people, and not have to and end up with a book that you're proud of.
Now, I know you said that your third book in the series is coming out this year, but you weren't sure. Are you aiming to try and have it done before the event, or do you think it's going to be later, like towards, fall, winter?
My pipe dream is to have it up before the event. Okay. I have to see, where I fall on the editing list and everything, but I'm going to try my best to get it up before the event so I can have all the pretty books.
Yeah, very cool.
But if it ends up being fall, winter, I would much rather, wait to put it out and make sure it's good quality than rush to have it out at a certain time. So
yeah, that's good.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and that's cool too, because you'll be able to tell people though, if you're at the point where you're looking for your editor, you're just telling them when they buy the first two, hey, the third one is coming out. It's in the process. It's at the final stages. It's not like somebody who might be saying, well, I'm going to write this third one, so.
I promise not to pull a Jar Jar Martin.
I will string it along. Yeah, string it along. So
yeah,
very cool.
Yeah, there's nothing worse than getting into a series and then it's like no more, because I've got a couple of series that I've been reading and I'm like, yeah, there's not going to be any more books, which is a shame because there should be.
Yeah.
Or it's been like years and years and years and years and the next book hasn't come out yet. Carver Pike, I'm looking at you.
We'll have to mention that when we go to Scares in Virginia.
Yeah.
Remind him. Of course, some of those things I don't think he writes anymore, so maybe that's not really his fault anymore. You have to, like, you're gonna have to pick it up. You're gonna have to fan fiction it, right?
Yeah, yeah. The one I'm really wanting is his Edge of Reflection series. Okay. Yeah, he owes me a 5th book.
See, and that's pretty cool too, though. That you're going to be able to talk to the writer and tell him, "Hey, let's get it going."
I'm waiting.
So, yeah,
ready. Let's go.
So tell us about your writing environment. When you're writing, do you listen to music or do you have to have silence? Do you have to close your dogs out of the room?
My dogs usually are sitting with me. They play in the morning and I take them out and then they come sit with me while I work. I listen to music pretty much all the time while I'm writing. I get a lot of my ideas like when I'm listening to music. And it just kind of helps my brain stay focused on like doing my actual writing instead of having squirrel moments every 5 minutes because I'm like, oh, shiny, let's look at this.
Yeah.
It keeps my phone occupied because have the music up on my phone and like, well, I can my music's gonna stop if I mess with it. But I have my little writing room and listen to music, have my pugs. It's nice.
Anything specific? Or is it every day something different?
I mean, to be completely honest, right now it's the Eras Tour movie on repeat in the background. But it's kind of something different with every book. And it depends on like what part of the book I'm writing. So like if I'm writing like an intense action sequence, I'm gonna have like a movie soundtrack in the background. If I'm writing, something a little more like tender-hearted, it's gonna be sometimes that's a movie soundtrack, sometimes it's a video game soundtrack, sometimes it's just a song by one of my favorite artists. Sometimes I find like these really obscure little songs, and I'm like, yes, this is the one. I'm gonna listen. Like, this is the song for the book. So it kind of varies per book, I guess. That's what I'll say.
Nice. I'm a silence person. I need to have silence.
I also I have a mechanical keyboard, and that's great. I love it. It sounds very clicky while I'm typing. I feel very special.
Yes, I lost my keyboard and I grabbed my son's extra, and it's a clicky one. So it sounds like a typewriter going off.
Yes.
Drives Dawn crazy. So.
But a couple times, like I'm writing, my family members will be like, "What's that weird sound?" Oh, it's Mary. She's writing. Like, yes. Sorry.
Nice. Now, are you a plotter or a pantster?
I'm kind of a happy medium of the two. Like I have I'll know like a beginning, a middle, and an end, kind of. Like I knew pretty much how the trilogy itself was going to end, when I first started writing it. I knew what was going to happen in the middle book. But then as I'm writing, the in between to get to those points can change very, I might think it's going to go one way, but as I'm writing, the characters are like, nope, we're going to do our own thing. And usually it ends up better than what I originally planned. And so it's kind of fun for me to see where the story goes to actually get to the middle and the end. Sometimes it completely changes. Sometimes it goes very smoothly. But my characters have, even though the end of the trilogy is still going to be the same, the individual characters, their endings are completely different from what I originally started with. And then I was like, hey, and actually we're going to have prequels before this, so we're going to put in stuff for that too. So I'm going backwards, but it's very fun.
Yeah, that sounds fun.
Yeah, see, I honestly don't know how people can wrap their heads around doing prequels to their books, because you've written this book and you have these characters, and of course the prequel is likely going to have some of the same characters, if not at least one that's in the book. But you kind of got to rewind and go backwards and remember things that you put in your book so they make sense in what happened before, and I'm like, I don't know if my mind would be able to handle that. So anybody who can write a prequel, I'm like, good on you. You're a better writer than I am, because I just don't think my mind could handle it.
I have so many notebooks and
I was gonna say she's probably taking notes every time she thinks of it. Yeah.
And not gonna lie, there's a couple things where I'm like, I might have written myself into a corner there, but we'll figure it out. And usually it ends up being more exciting because I have written myself into a corner and I have to come up with a creative way to get out of it. Usually it's like, oh, actually, this idea is better, and it bypasses the block. Like, so it is definitely very confusing at times, though. Like, especially trying to wrap up a trilogy right now. I'm like going back over all my notes, be like, okay, I need to remember all the little threads I left loose. We have to tie them all up now. Like,
Yep. Yeah, sounds like a very interesting trilogy, really. You know, I read pretty much any genre. I don't read just horror, although that's primarily what I read. And, you know, anything that sounds fascinating, Star Wars mashed up with the Hunger Games, heck yeah, I'm in. You know,
yes.
sign me up.
I will say one of the best books I think I have ever read, and is like one of my top 3 books of all time, is the Revenge of the Sith novelization. Like,
Okay.
best book, especially if you like struggle with Anakin as a character. It's fantastic.
What is that? I've
Yes.
always wanted to get into reading the Star Wars books. I actually bought Death Troopers, which is supposed to be like a a zombie stormtrooper kind of
Yeah.
book. But I've just never really gotten over the hump and actually opened up a Star Wars book and read it. I think this year is going to be the year, though. I think I'm gonna. And there's like hundreds of Star Wars books.
You know, there's so many.
And if
So
you're
many.
if you're a fan of comics, I think the Darth Vader stuff Marvel started putting out when they took over, when Disney bought Marvel too. The Darth Vader, it really
I love
fleshes out the character.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it really makes Anakin into a character you actually can like connect with, and you get where, you know, some of the stuff I feel that they missed with the movie when they did it.
Yeah.
The comics do such a wonderful job of filling in the blanks, and they have some of the best writers Marvel was working on it. So if you get a chance to jump on, and some of them are on Prime, you can read it for free.
Oh
So,
wow. Okay. Yeah, because the movie with Anakin in them, the movies, they just made him, and it's not the actor's fault. It's not the actor. It's just they made the character of Anakin so whiny and just like the adult Anakin, not the little kid Anakin. The Hayden Christensen, was that who it
yeah,
was? They just made him so whiny. It's like,
they make up for it in the comics for sure.
yeah.
And I've heard that the books do the same thing.
Yeah.
Yes.
And maybe that's why Kylo Ren in the movies was that way, because Kylo Ren in the first time you meet him, he's kind of whiny too.
Yeah.
So like, well, you get that from your granddad or from your granddad.
I mean, he wants to be like his grandpa, so
Yeah.
we like to joke that, you know, like the part in episode 7 where he's like talking to the helmet. He's like, I'm so sorry, grandfather. I feel it again, the call to the light. And we're like, no, that is your grandfather. Telling you to stop it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, for sure.
No,
I could
I
talk
did
about
this
Star Wars
already.
all.
You don't need to do that.
Yeah.
And there's some Ren comics too that are pretty good.
Oh,
There's a whole
really?
bunch of there's a lot of interesting stuff. They really deep dive in the comics, so they get away with it they can't do on the shows or movies and stuff,
Yeah.
budget wise. So,
Yeah, I actually came around to liking Kylo Ren, and not even because of the third movie. He just kind of grew on me, but the Anakin in the movies, I was just like, I can't. I just can't.
I was kind of the same way, and then I read the books, and I liked Anakin a lot more.
yeah.
Like Anakin is one of my favorite characters. I could talk about Anakin for like, I could teach a class on Anakin. Like, let's be honest. But just how his, you know, his fall and his rise are orchestrated so intricately by Palpatine, and just you know, the movies, they had their flaws, but I think the core of the tragedy of Anakin Skywalker was really well done, with kind of the extra fleshing out he got with like the Clone Wars, the books, the comics, just to kind of show us a little more Anakin Skywalker between episode 2 and episode 3.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I think those really help build his legacy and give you a better idea of what's going on. Is when the other creators got to dip their toe in the pool. I think Lucas was probably the problem with the first ones, because didn't he write all of them? But if you go back to the original trilogy, he had other people writing the scripts. Yeah, so
Like, I feel like episode 3, like he was starting to really find like his stride. And then he didn't make any more, but like one of my favorite scenes in episode 3 is when Anakin's in the council chambers and Padme's in her apartment. And you can tell everything that they're thinking, and there's not a single word spoken. It's just the music, the sunset, and the two characters. And it's like, that was really good. Like, I wish we could have had more of that in the previous ones.
yeah.
But yeah, so issues, but overall, I feel like the story really did what it wanted to.
Yeah. Yep. Do you ever think you'd write something I'm not going to say a Star Wars knockoff, but you said your books are Hunger Games mashed up with Star Wars. Would you ever go completely like in a Star Wars, Star Trek direction maybe in the future? Have you thought about it?
I've had some ideas for like some really hardcore sci-fi in the future. Kind of like getting into like the video game aspect. Like artificial intelligence. Fun fact, the Red Star books in their infancy started as kind of a Star Wars story. One of the main villains was like a bounty hunter in Star Wars, and she was like force sensitive. And that was like really cool. And so I started trying to write from like Anakin and Obi-Wan's point of view, and I was like, I don't think I can write characters that aren't mine. At least not Anakin and Obi-Wan Kenobi, because those are like such big characters to try and write in. But now that I have some more experience under my belt, it might be fun. It might be fun. So I would definitely be open to it. Yes.
Nice. Well, we'll keep an eye on you for the future. We'll see what's coming up.
Yes.
So can you tell us where people can find your books besides coming to the event and stopping at your table?
Yes. The easiest place to find them is on my website, maryflintbooks.com. I have links to all of them there, but they're on Amazon, they're on Barnes & Noble. Pretty much anywhere you buy a book, you can find it. So
nice.
Great.
All right. So yeah, come on out to, let me back up a second. It's like a Monday all over again for me. We'll have a link to Mary's website so you can go and find all her books. We'll have a link to the Eventbrite so you can grab your ticket for the Texas AuthorCon and Book Festival. It is free, but you still want to grab a ticket. I think there's some prizes if you get a ticket. So yeah, Mary, it's been such a pleasure, and I'm going to hit you up for a Star Wars discussion.
please do.
We're just gonna after the event, we're gonna go
talking about Star Wars.
We're gonna go talk Star Wars. Yeah. That'll just make my whole weekend,
Mine too. Like,
Great.
yes, let's go.
All right, cool. So yeah, thanks for being on the show. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you so much for having me on. It's been great. This was so fun.
Yeah, and we will see you in July.
All right, see you then.
Take it easy.